This is an Acrocanthosaurus tooth. Acrocanthosaurus was a carnivore that lived in the early Cretaceous period. So that means that this fossil is around 110 million years old. Fossils like it, like this phalanx, used to support around 5 to 7 tons of body weight when they were functioning bones inside the organism. But now that they're fossils and they're millions of years old, they're fragile, they're susceptible to cracks and chips and damage, which makes them almost impossible to study. To avoid damaging priceless artifacts, many institutions use a process known as silicon molding to create replicas of fossils. Throughout the process, liquid silicone is used to create a cast, and this cast is then combined with a foam or a two-part resin to create the replica. But this method of recreation is not always effective. Liquid silicone can seep inside the pores and cracks of fossils and can tear them apart from the inside out when it hardens. And silicon molding also requires the transportation and the distribution of fossils, which further risk damaging them. In today's world, though, we have a technology known as fossil digitization, where a fossil can be completely scanned, digitally recreated, and physically made into a replica without ever being touched. So how does it work? Well, the digitization process begins with scanning. Pictured here is the micro CT scanner in the J.B. Hunt building here at the University of Arkansas. Circled in red is the origin of several X-rays, which pass through the specimen and are recorded as thousands of 2D images on the screen to the right. By layering these images on top of each other, it's possible to view the interior of the sample without taking a core. That's not all. We can also create a 3D view of the sample for study, like the tooth featured here. We're also able to see the structure, density, and topography of the specimen without the use of a microscope. But CT imagery is nothing new. CT scanners have been in the use of the medical industry for over 50 years. What is new is precisely what we can do with these scans. Now that we have projected images of the sample digitally, we are able to create a 3D render of the imagery. The render enables us to manipulate and study the fossil without fully removing it from the rock it was found in. We can use scans of modern turtles to fill in the gaps of ancient specimens, and we can repair cracks, crevices, and other damages to specimens in order to see what they look like originally. An entire organism can be pieced together within a computer program before it is assembled physically, negating the possibility of harm to the bones. Even so, we're able to convert these digital specimens back into physical models with the use of 3D printing. Our digital renders are loaded into what's called a splicing software, like Cura, where they are taken slice by slice and converted into files readable by the printers. Now, when it comes to 3D printing fossils, there are really two options for their production. The first is FDM, which is short for Fused Deposition Modeling. FDM prints are created layer by layer, usually out of PLA or ABS plastic, and because of their high detail and smooth appearance, FDM prints are usually used for the more visible parts of the dinosaur, like the claws, the teeth, and the skull. The second kind, stereolithography printing, uses liquid resin hardened by a UV laser, and is used for parts like the ilium or sacral bones that stand out less as part of a dinosaur. Seen here are the original Acrocanthosaurus tooth and phalanx bones compared to their scanned, rendered, and 3D printed replicas. Throughout the entire creation of these copies, the original bones barely had to be touched, and were at far lesser risk of harm than they would have been throughout the molding and casting process. Now, obviously, these 3D printed parts don't really look like the replicas you see in museums, and that's where silicon molding becomes relevant again. We can create molds of the fossils using the 3D printed versions so that the silicon, plaster, and resin never touch the original fossil, yet an accurate casting and replica can be created. With all of the good that 3D scanning and the digitization of fossils can do for the field of paleo, the technology is still relatively new and quite limited. For example, in new specimens that still have cartilage intact, it is quite literally invisible to the scanner. Other non-bone structures also have complications when scanning, like coprolites, fossilized impressions, and pieces of armor plating. What's so fascinating about the digitization of fossils through scanning technology is that it can be done anywhere and anytime. It's a far more efficient and streamlined process than is the casting and silicone molding that we're so used to in paleo today. Digital fossils can be used not only as tools for research, but also tools for teaching and lesson opportunities. The digitization of fossils is in the future of paleo. Thank you all for watching.